Hi, I'm Terry Farr, Executive Director for the Greater Picayune Area Chamber of Commerce, located in Picayune, Mississippi. And I'd like to welcome you to Chamber Conversations. Today I'm meeting with a fine fella, and he is the Circuit Court Judge, and we'll let him go into that into greater detail in just a minute. So I'd like to welcome Buddy McDonald.
Good to see you, Terry.
Claiborne McDonald, the fourth, I think, isn't it?
That is.
The fourth. Did you know the other three?
I knew two of the other three. One had passed away by the time I got here. We just didn't have much imagination in names in my family. So everybody had a nickname.
What about Steve?
Well, Steve...
That's okay. We'll
I was the first child, so I got the first... And I don't know, people that are genealogists may know this, but the Scots in Scotland, they had naming patterns, and like the first child was named after the grandfather of the father, and then back and forth like that. And so that's why I was named Claiborne. But I had tons of cousins that had Claiborne in their name somewhere. Buzzy Grice, that used to be city clerk here, he was my first cousin. His name was really Claiborne, and so we all picked a nickname.
Yeah. All right, so we'll go into a little bit of history about maybe where you're born, raised, blah, 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 and then we want to get into a little, maybe an education course, if you will, about judges, okay, about the court system, maybe whatever you want to talk about. Right. But you grew up here in Picayune, or what?
Well, I was born at Southern Baptist Hospital in New Orleans. My mother had gotten her nursing diploma there. She was an RN, and when she got ready to have us, we didn't have the hospitals like we had today, and she knew the OBGYNs in New Orleans. She went back down there to have Steve and I. Then I moved. I was only down there 3 days, but when I came back, and then I've been in Picayune ever since, except when I was at college and in the military.
Yeah.
And I went to school at Picayune Miss Jackie's kindergarten. Some of the older people know what that is. Then I went to school at Picayune, in the Picayune school system, Picayune Memorial High. I graduated from there in '66. Then I went to Mississippi State University, and I finished there in 1970. Then I went to law school at the University of Alabama, and finished there, and came back. And back then you had to take the bar. If you didn't go to Ole Miss, you had to take the bar if you came in from out of state. So I had to take the bar, and had to wait a couple of months to take that. They gave it at kind of odd times, but I passed the bar the first time.
Very good.
And then I started practicing law.
Does that mean you were a good student?
It meant that...
You passed the bar.
That's what it meant.
Okay.
Actually, perseverance means a lot. If you study hard, if you work hard at something, you can do it as a general rule. And I worked hard at doing that every day. After I was working with Lonnie Smith here in his law firm, and I would work, and then at 6 I'd come back down there and study till midnight, and that went on for like 5 months before I could take the test. So I put a lot of study time in it before I went and took the test. But finished that. Then after that, I guess it was, got those results back, I think in September or October. And then the next year I got appointed a municipal judge in Picayune. I did that for 5 years while I was practicing law with Lonnie. And then I I decided to run for county prosecuting attorney, and I ran for that, and I did that for 4 years. And I was practicing with Lonnie part of that time, and then Gerald Patch and I formed a law firm and practiced after that. And then there was so much to do being the county prosecutor, which was also the youth court prosecutor. I found it very difficult to do that and to have a private practice too, so I had to make a decision as to do one or the other. And the legislature had created an full-time assistant district attorney for the DA, and the district attorney appointed me to fill that position because I'd been doing a good bit of the stuff here anyway. And then I did that for a long time, and then I got elected district attorney twice. And at the end of that, I went to, I retired and practiced law for...
How long did you retire? About 15 minutes, or you weren't retired long?
It wasn't a long time.
Yeah. So like my retirement.
Well, no, honestly, it was, the retire wasn't very long at all, a week or two, 3. But then we started up another law practice,
right.
And that went on for about 4 or 5 years, I think. Then the legislature created this other judge's position in our district. And the way that happened was we had 2 judges, and the state keeps track of how many cases per judge there are in every district. Well, they were going to give 4 new judges out, I think, or 5. And Herb Frierson was the head of the Appropriations Committee in the House, and he looked at it and he said, well, in the 15th district, which is our district, the stats showed they've got more cases per judge than any other district in the state. So surely if we're going to give additional judges to people with less cases, there should be a judge created, another one for that district, which they did. And they, anywhere between 41 and 50% of the cases in the district, depending on the year, come out of Pearl River County. That's felony or criminal. And we had, in our district, we have Pearl River County, Lamar County, Marion County, Jefferson Davis County, and Lawrence County, which are Picayune, Poplarville, Purvis, Columbia, Monticello, and Prentice. And so that's a lot of cases for one county. And we travel around a good bit. And the other 2 judges are Judge Mazingo and Judge Harrell, and they're both from Lamar County. So I've done that up to this point, and then qualification is over. I qualified to run for this next term, and qualifications are over, and nobody ran against me. So if I can live to get to the polls and vote for me, then I guess I get elected. But to the relief of many and the chagrin of others. But we stay busy. The circuit court handles felony criminal cases, and we handle larger civil cases, and we handle appeals from the Workmen's Compensation Commission in that come from our district, and also employment security, and also we, in counties where they don't have a county court. Now we have a county court, and Lamar County has a county court, but the other 3 don't. In those counties, if somebody gets convicted in city court or justice court, we hear appeals from those courts, and those appeals are what's called trials de novo. In other words, you start from scratch and hear the whole trial again. Here in Pearl River County, Judge Lumpkin does those with the in county court. She also does youth court, which is that's tremendous. They had youth court over there yesterday, and they have a tremendous youth court caseload. As a matter of fact, you ought to, if she hadn't already been on, you ought to have her on here one day.
We talked about that. And
she is a leader in the state with respect to innovations in youth court. When I was district attorney, I was president of the State Prosecutors Association and on the board of directors of the National District Attorneys College. National District Attorneys Association. Then I was an instructor at the National District Attorneys College, which is up in South Carolina. And when I was in the military, I got my Army commission through ROTC, and I was a transportation corps officer first, then a quartermaster officer. I switched from the reserve to the National Guard, and I was the battalion S4 for the 106 Support Battalion of the 155th Infantry. Then 155th, they have a company in Poplarville too. I went to Command and General Staff College. I completed that, rather. And I belong to St. Charles Church here in Picayune, and member of the Picayune Rotary Club.
Hey, you remember the Chamber of Commerce?
And the Chamber of Commerce, too. That's right.
That's right. We appreciate that.
And I do, too, sometimes. Past president of the Chamber and board member. And
yeah, I was on board with it one time.
That was interesting.
Yeah. Have you had any hobbies other than texting people at 3 and 4 in the morning and reading? You got a very big library at the house.
I like to read. I like to shoot and
shoot
firearms.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you can categorize. I don't know if I can categorize shooting as a hobby or a necessary skill, but we deal with some truly wonderful people, and we deal with some people that aren't so truly wonderful.
I won't ask you if you're packing or whatever, but so what have we not covered that you think we ought to cover?
Well, let's see. We
as far as the court system goes, or any
one
of
thing
that.
One thing that's going through a great deal of change at the present time is the prison system, and the legislature is attempting to reduce the cost of the prison system, and there are different attitudes about doing that, different ideas about how to do it, and this is not the first time we've been through this. When Governor Musgrove was governor, the same thing happened, and the prisons, a lot of people were put out of prison, but then the prisons fill back up because, unfortunately, a lot of the people don't straighten out when they get out.
Don't learn their lesson.
And I think there's some things that we need at the prisons. I think one thing is that we need a vocational and technical program that's widespread. And if you don't have a skill, trade, or vocation when you go to prison, and you would be astounded at the number of people that come before us that have never worked in their life or allegedly worked for a relative, which a lot of times turns out when they are questioned further ends up being taken out the trash or whatever. But they need to learn a skill, and I think that should be a condition on parole. And I think the state ought to help them find a job. There are a lot of jobs out there that hire folks that have been in prison and parole out. Now you may think that's strange, but most of them have to report to probation and parole officers.
Sure.
So they're drug tested, and they, to some degree, keep an eye on them too. One thing I think should be, there are several things I think should be changed there, but the thing probably easiest understood is that it would seem to me it would be better for those field agents with the Department of Corrections to work in the evenings so that the people didn't have to take off work to go up there to report. You
Makes
follow
sense.
what I'm saying?
Makes sense.
Which wouldn't result in the officers working more hours, but they just work different hours, you know. There are, you know, people don't think about it, but government initially was formed, whether it was in a tribe or a clan. If you were in Scotland or in the Arab countries, they call them clans, tribes. Governments were originally formed to protect the people in that tribe or clan. So protection of the people is the number one priority or rationale for having a government to start with. Now it's gotten quite a bit further out, and the government does a lot of things, but it's necessary for us to, I think it's necessary for these prison reforms also to take that into consideration, the effect these things are going to have. And a lot of times it's difficult for people that don't work in the system every day to see unintended consequences that result from changes that may be made. Some changes are great, some changes are less than great.
Well, I appreciate you showing up this morning. And
we have to stop.
we don't have to. It's like Buddy. I mean, when Steve came by, you know, we did 42 minutes. So I told him only our family members would probably watch it. So.
Well, that's probably true. I watched it all.
I appreciate that. Well, what else do we need to talk about? I mean, I would assume that bad behavior is why you're employed, huh?
Well,
people's bad behavior, so we need to work on the bad behavior so that y'all are not overloaded with work.
You need to look at several things there too, and I didn't bring that up, but that's a good point. One point is that I would say most of the people that come before me dropped out of school in the 9th grade.
Wow.
When you talk to them about why they dropped out of school, some of them have what I call extraordinary reasons. Their parents broke up, or they didn't basically have parents or nobody to give them any guidance. But a lot of them left school because after the 9th grade, a lot of those folks are being trained with an eye that everybody's going to go to college. Well, a lot of these folks, one, they don't want to go to college,
right,
and two, they're not interested in going to college. But they would be interested in learning a trade skill or technical certification.
right.
Well, like welders on a pipeline, they tell me I think Dr. Osbrooks told me that they're making $70,000 or $80,000 or more a year.
Good money.
Fresh out of PRCC.
Right.
Now, the problem is Picayune, Pearl River Central, Poplarville can't each afford, I don't think, all the equipment necessary to train people to do some of these highly qualified technical jobs. But what could happen is, I would think, is that we could run buses from Picayune, Pearl River Central, and Poplarville and to PRCC, so that from the 9th grade on, if that's the route they wanted to take, they could take that, and they could finish up in another 3 or 4 years, get a high school diploma, and get their technical certificate or their vocational certifications. I know some people right now that on their own went up to PRCC and talked to them about having a class at night to teach people to be machinists. Well, machinists make a lot of money. You have to have several different types of certifications. And I feel certain that a lot of these people would do that too. And a lot of them, if they had a job when they got out of high school, they could get married, they could have some insurance, they could have health insurance possibly, and that would reduce the burden on Medicaid in the state. It would do a lot of things. The other thing is maintaining some better family structure in the state. Now, a lot of people have been divorced, but even if you've been divorced, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't participate in raising your children. It's not just something where you pay child support and that's the end of it, And a lot of these kids, you get them in counseling or something. Some of them say, well, it doesn't matter what I do. I'm not worth anything. My own father doesn't have anything to do with me. Well, there's people, they grow up with these ideas based on how they're treated, by their parents, and that needs to be dealt with to some degree. I think another thing is our churches should, at one time, churches ran schools, churches ran hospitals, churches ran charity and welfare organizations. Well, there were several good things about that. One was they knew who actually needed help. The other thing was that you were in a situation where you to get the help, you had to belong to some church, So you were exposed to some moral training along with the other things you were getting at school or wherever. And I think that by the government taking everything over, there's good and bad to that. The government's probably got more money to spend. But if you notice, when the hurricane hit, many of the food distribution locations were at volunteer fire departments. Well, I was the operations director for the EOC during the hurricane in Pearl River County. But that was a very good thing because the people at that fire department knew the people in their community. Right. They knew who needed things, who didn't need things, who might be playing the system, that kind of thing. And I think that the churches could play a bigger part, and some churches do. But some of these people, especially these people who initially have some drug or alcohol problems, probably the best thing is not to totally shun them. Probably the best thing to do is work more intensively with them in an effort to straighten them out, not be isolated. And I'm not accusing anybody of that, but a lot of times that's how it ends up, The other thing we have to remember, some people good, some people aren't good. After all those years, if I had to tell you about all my acquaintances, the majority probably have either been on probation, parole, or been to prison. Now, some of those people, if you needed help, you could probably count on them to help you because they're basically good folks. Some of them are not, and they would kill you to see how you look when they killed you. I mean, they're different. Some have mental problems. They may not be mentally disturbed enough to be not guilty by reason of insanity, but they're mentally disturbed enough so that that's a major factor in their behavior and what they do. The drug problem that's a whole nother thing, you know. Over the years, I've come to the conclusion that, and I think most experts would tell you this, but you can do a lot of things to try and help people. I've known a lot of parents that nearly went bankrupt trying to help their kids out that had drug problems. But until the person wants to quit using drugs, they're not going to quit using drugs. And sometimes going to jail even for a little while shows them, well, you know, I've hit rock bottom, I need to change. There was a lady at one of the opioid drug meetings in Hattiesburg that I went to that is the new program that's being pushed right now by the federal government and the states. And she was the last person to speak up there, and she said that her dad was an assistant district attorney in New Mexico. She didn't know how many times she'd been to jail. She'd been to prison twice. One day, DHS and the police showed up at her house and took her 2 daughters away. Well, she said, because of her drug abuse. She said, I cried for 2 days, and then I got a telephone book. I looked in the yellow pages and found a church that had a 6-month rehab program, in-resident rehab program, and it was free. And she said, I went to that program, stuck with it. She was a heroin addict, got off heroin, and a little while later got my children back, and she was there at Hattiesburg because she was getting a master's at USM. But she said, that's what it took to get me off, is losing my children.
Right.
So it's not as simple as sending everybody to prison, although at some point some probably need to be. Judge Harrell supervises our drug court, and he's won several awards, and he puts a lot of time and effort into that, and does a good job with that, and they've had success. Then you've got several other things at several other programs, Jacob's Well, and there's several places on the coast and around in our area too that have resident facilities and that have had success, you know, with the folks, and a lot of them are faith-based programs. I had a friend that was an alcoholic once, and he said, I was trying to talk him into going to AA, and he didn't want to go to AA. He said, I know somebody that went there, and they just try to get you addicted to Jesus. And I said, well,
pretty good addiction, huh?
You're not going to get arrested for being addicted to Jesus, and how's it working out with a whiskey? You know, that ain't working out too well for you, and you could end up getting killed.
Devil in the bottle, huh?
Yeah. So, and that may be true to some extent. The guy that started AA was an Episcopal priest that had been an alcoholic and got, you know, off of alcohol and developed the program, as I understand it. But I think most people fall into things because of friends, acquaintances.
Power of association will get you every time.
And nowadays, it's not so much, you know, some evil-looking guy hiding down an alleyway trying to sucker you into trying dope. It's more, I got friends, and my friends are using, and so I thought I'd try it, and all my friends were trying it.
Well, I think they call that peer pressure.
Yeah, sometimes you have to get you a new set of friends.
Yeah.
What is that country song? I'm gonna find me a new set of losers. So.
Mm-hmm.
But and I don't mean to disparage anybody, but sometimes you got to move on. A lot of people would do better if when they paroled out they went to another county, because they're not going to be hanging around the same people all the time.
Yeah, I told a young fellow one time, I think he was about 18 years old, and I said, Rodney, you hang around with other guys your age that are smoking, drinking, and doing drugs. One of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to start or they're going to quit, and chances of them quitting is pretty slim to none. So
and there's a lot of truth to that. And there's probably 1,000 times in all our lives when we could have gone down that path if we hadn't had something, that little thing whispering in our ear telling us that's probably not a good idea to get into that like that. But generally what I find is most people, even most law enforcement folks, are concerned about a lot of these people now. The people that continue to do crimes of violence and stuff like that, they got to get out there and do their job. They see some of these people who've got problems, and the problem is the problem, and something needs to be done. Now, allegedly in the prisons, they're supposed to be formulating some new plans and programs up there for that, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Problem is money, and people don't want to spend money, and it's like mental health. The problem there is money.
Sure.
And
money seems to be a big problem. One thing that you and I have talked about in the past, and I've got to do something about this because I don't want to keep on talking about it, but we will be at the Chamber starting, I'm going to call it Leadership Mentorship Program for high school students, Pearl River County and or Pearl River Central and Picayune High School, because Poplarville is just a little bit probably too far away. And what I want to do in this conference room where we're sitting is have about 5 PRC and 5 Picayune high school students, maybe 11th, 12th graders. I've talked to Alan Lumpkin, I've talked to Dean Shaw, and I know I've talked to you and several others. And again, I'm going to need some help putting all this together because I don't know for sure what we're wanting to accomplish. But just like what we're talking about, there's a lot of things that you don't learn in school that I think maybe we can, as a bunch of leaders for the county, can help out with some of our students. And because really what I want to do is keep these students in Pearl River County instead of them leaving. Well, and so we've got to help in all these areas that you're talking about. And
I agree with you. That's a big problem. We educate, especially with our college educated and graduate folks, our college graduates. We educate a lot of people we don't have jobs for and send them to other states.
Yeah, we got to.
We have to stop that, and we have to. And there are a lot of different factors that come into play for that. But the getting business in, and I think the chamber has been talking to the board of supervisors, and they've been talking about trying to come up with some effective economic development plan. And but one thing I see is, and I know I didn't, when I graduated from high school, my dad had to sit down with me before I went off to college and show me how to write a check and keep the checkbook balanced and all that. And I don't know if they have a class on those kinds of things, but just the normal stuff, and how to vote and where to vote and why to vote. And I heard a guy one time say, I'm just not interested in politics. And that may be, but it's like Plato said, you may not be interested in politics, but politics is interested in you. In other words, the government's interested in you. And honestly, things have gotten to the point, you talk to people that are under 30, and a lot of them don't read the paper, they don't listen to the news, And I've had quite a number of them tell me the reason I don't is that it scares me. I just don't want to hear it. You know, it's all about terrible things that could happen or are happening. And but the way to deal with those things is not to ignore them. You know, you just have to face them and deal with it on a day-to-day basis. Try and do something to help them change.
Yep.
But I really am not supposed to talk about politics, so I'll get into all that.
I don't think you did you?
No, I didn't. But
Okay.
I'm just,
Okay.
I got to watch myself.
Yeah.
Get in. My wife said when she heard that, she said my head would explode.
Did you want to say hey to Susie?
Hey, Sue. I'll tell her so she can turn this on.
Yeah, we'll make sure she watches it. Well, there was a lot of good tips here today. We need to all be better parents and grandparents, and we need to make sure that these kids don't smoke, drink, do drugs, and they finish high school and go on. And hey, everybody doesn't need to go to college, but anyway.
Most people don't need to go to college.
Yeah.
Now, that may sound funny from a guy that went to college, 7 years to college, and year round. And then on top of that, I came back and worked on a master's in criminal justice at Southern when I got out of law school. But the vast majority of the jobs in this country don't require a college degree. There are, I'll never forget, the first client I had out of law school was a guy I went to high school with. He comes in. I was in school. He'd been working offshore. He was making $70,000 a year, and at the time I just started working as an associate at the law firm, and I was making $700 a month. And I began to think I had taken the wrong turn there. I should have been offshore too. But there are many jobs that pay more money than you can make if you than if you went to school. If you know, especially with some of the things people are majoring in today, which they're having a hard time finding a job. Period. I know the machinists, electricians, plumbers. You know, a lot of those people make a lot of money, and they're only limited by the number of hours they can or want to work. You know?
Well, buddy, let's wrap this up because I see something flashing up there that says low battery. So I learn lessons every time that I do a video. You know, so I think I need to charge my phone up. But I'm going to leave everybody with a tip, and then we may disagree on this. It's not all about the money, but anyway. I appreciate you coming by and visiting and sharing, and look forward to getting back together and having another event, and appreciate what you do for Chamber and the county, and make it a great day.